Aquilo. Season 8. Chapter 9. Fields of Regrets. Before going to the Institute for those ill-fated 3 semesters, my culinary education was divided into 3 distinct facets. Literature is the main dish, the central point from where everything else spawns. Cookbooks, magazine articles, blogs, and memoirs all contribute to the core knowledge from where good cooking evolves. Like a well-baked roast or a delicious plate of homemade pasta and expertly made sauce, it's the backbone of the meal. Everything else will depend on that academic knowledge, and it will be the point to which a chef returns whenever in doubt. Then there's experience. Technical knowledge is nothing without the practice to support it. As many recipes as I read, I would be nothing without the hands-on knowledge that comes from trying things out. You can learn about baking cookies from a cookbook, but you can only know how to make them by mixing some ingredients and throwing some dough in an oven. Experience is the appetizers, desserts, and side dish of the meal. Even the most delicious steak, succulent stew, and mouth-watering burger is little more than food without fries, a salad, a bowl of soup, or a chocolate mousse to give it context. Knowing how to properly coordinate each piece of a meal is a skill unto itself. Like words in a sentence, there needs to be a sense to how all these parts follow each other. The palate has a better memory than we give it credit for, and it will remember the flavor profile from one dish to the next. Care must be given to how rich a main dish is compared to the appetizers that came before and the desserts or cheese plate that will follow. Good cooking is a complicated choreography that can only be truly mastered through practice. Finally, there's that last subtle facet, the one we often neglect but that good schools will impose. It mixes theoretical knowledge and experience, bridging the two through oral tradition and mentorship. It's the choice of drinks for the meal, a sentence of its own, often overlooked, but with as much impact as any individual dish. Mom wasn't much of a cook. Not that we ate poorly, but she wasn't one to pull out the bain-marie to steam vegetables or carefully layer potatoes into a dauphinoise. When I told her about mother sauces as a teenager, she stared at me like I was speaking in tongues. Had I known Doris, maybe I would have sought her out, but as things stood, I was forced to reach outside of my family for instruction. Whenever I ate a uniquely good meal at a diner, I'd pester the staff to let me talk to the cook. If my parents took me to a fancy restaurant for my birthday or a special event, I'd ask to talk to the chef and ask intrusive questions about their process. Some were protective of their secrets, others annoyed at the child demanding free instructions, but the true artists would be delighted to share their passion. This one time, I saved up to eat at this one posh restaurant in Montreal, Le Club de l'Abbaye. I had to make reservations a month in advance for a single table. The meal was fine, a little too experimental in some places and with too many elements of the molecular gastronomy which was popular at the time. My veal medallion was served with a gel sphere of sauce that the waiter popped, allowing the sauce to flow over the meat. My salad was served on a block of dry ice, which I was warned not to touch, and the vinaigrette was in the form of a savory foam. Everything was beautiful and technically flawless. The flavors were delicious, if on the exotic side. Some flirted with bizarre for its own sake, but never crossed that line where they would abandon proper flavor. When I asked to talk to the chef, a grizzled, no-nonsense woman named Justine Beaumont, she came out with half of her kitchen staff, fearing I had a complaint. She weathered my barrage of questions like a bastion, answering everything with short efficiency. As a 16-year-old, sitting in one of the city's most luxurious restaurants, able to engage this woman who was everything I aspired to be at that age, I was over the moon, despite my constant stammering. After indulging the child at her table for a few minutes, Justine Beaumont dismissed her people, sending them back to attend to the kitchen, and sat opposite me for another few minutes. She answered a few more questions, mostly about her choices of vegetable for the salad and what she used to thicken the broccoli and leek soup. Eventually, she asked if I could stick around for another few hours and had her staff bring me a non-alcoholic cocktail and some crostini and olive paste. Later, Justine gave me a tour of her kitchen. I'd never seen the interior of a high-end restaurant kitchen. The long steel counters and tall convection ovens, all in sterile brushed steel under harsh lighting. It was bigger and far more clinical than I'd imagined, even from the few photos I'd seen. In a way, I was disappointed by the lack of soul, but the scale made up for that. After all, it made sense. A restaurant of Le Club's reputation had to have the cleanest of facilities and the most efficient layout. Justine explained what and where everything was, bragging about the price of every piece of equipment or where it was imported from. She was as proud of her kitchen as I hoped my parents would be of me once I had a restaurant of my own. Stars in my eyes, I thought our tour was coming to an end. The staff were leaving, switching off lights and equipment as they bid the chef farewell. Then Justine opened the massive refrigerator and pulled out a covered container of marinating chicken. Using tongs, she pulled out one aromatic breast, dripping with juices and spices, putting it on a plate. She then stood back and threw down the gauntlet. Cook it. I walked into Le Club de l'Abbaye a shy teenager with dreams that seemed to tower over my skills. I walked out with stars in my eyes and enough confidence to billow the sails of my ambitions to their ultimate conclusion. Or so I thought. Justine Beaumont passed away less than 18 months later, a victim of some form of blood cancer. The club survived her passing for a year, but eventually shuttered, collapsing without its main pillar to hold it up. The chef wasn't a friend. We didn't keep in touch. I had planned to reach out for an internship after my first year at the Institute. When I learned of her passing, I mourned both Justine and the opportunity that had slipped away in equal measure. I wish I had known her enough to shed tears, to have stories about her beyond that one evening when she challenged me to prepare a chicken breast in her kitchen. It's easy to trace my arrogance back to that night. The infection of pride spread to me by the nod of my betters in the field where I dreamed of excelling. But Justine Beaumont taught me something else that I think I had forgotten since. Something I've had to relearn through the years. While I was seasoning the chicken breast in a cast iron skillet, she watched and explained. While this was her recipe, she had never touched the piece of meat, nor did she have anything to do with its preparation. The spiced peppers used were cut by one person, another seared them, while a third mixed fennel, oil, lemon juice, and salt to prepare the marinade. Another person cleaned up the chicken breast, making shallow incisions in the flesh before putting it and 24 more into a bowl. I ate the breast I cooked, and Justine commented that this was one of her signature dishes I was savoring. Yet she had nothing to do with the particular specimen in my plate. Walking back to Pickering's farm, I think about Justine for the first time in years. I think about the meal I paid a fortune to enjoy and the chicken breast I made in her kitchen. The sound of my friend's footsteps remind me that, in a way, I have my own kitchen staff. Not for the kitchen itself, but as our cemetery heist showed, there are people willing and ready to cut vegetables and mix marinades should I ever need them to. The details on the piece of paper are difficult to make out in the moonlight, but that doesn't matter. The origins of the sign are all that matters, and while I don't know the exact hand responsible for putting it together, there's no question what it represents. I've gone up against demons in the past, mindless beasts like the Hunger Demon and the Hellhounds, as well as thinking creatures like Peter and the Envy Demon. This is the first time I've run across demons that plot and plan. Demons that work together towards a common goal. Demons that assemble their own kitchen crew. What are they cooking at the Anthony Gillard Memorial Arena and in the woods? How long have those plans been marinating? I stop and look back at the woods, allowing my companions to get several feet ahead of me before they notice. The trees sway gently with the wind, and a wave ripples over the surface of the field. The faint moonlight lends a mystical quality to the sight. I shiver, but I can't tell if it's from the cool air brushing my skin or the terrible things looming over the horizon. That thing was over $300. Richard David Pickering isn't mad, he's disappointed. The coffee he serves us isn't bad. It's made with one of those stove-top coffee percolators, one that could compete with my own brasswork contraption in age and eccentricity. Looks like it was picked up from a thrift store for a fraction of its worth. There's a glass tube on its side with a purpose that I cannot fathom. I'm sorry, Annabelle apologizes with little conviction. I must have dropped it while in the clearing. Can't we find it with an app or something? It's a GPS, isn't it? She's referring to the little device Pickering lent her before we left on our mission to find Veronique Lagacé, and her argument makes sense. Or at least, I thought it did. Not when it isn't activated, he sighs, setting cups on the vintage Formica kitchen table we're all sitting at. Don't worry about it. I'll find it later or buy a new one or... I hear Annabelle offer a half-hearted protest, saying she'll pay for the lost device, but the conversation fades away. Instead, I'm lost in the myriad religious symbols that cover the walls. There's a concentration of crucifixes and portraits of saints nailed to the frame of windows and doors. Standing, I walk to the sink, half-finished cup of coffee in hand. It's dark outside, but not yet so late that it'll be a problem getting a decent night's sleep. The clock above the humming refrigerator tells me the Aquilo Café isn't even closed yet. Like a maitre d' evaluating the upkeep of his domain, I run the tip of my finger along the ledge of the window above the sink. Salt. Pink Himalayan salt. I'm not sure if various types of sodium chloride have different properties, but I bet I know why Pickering seasons his windows. Along with the salt, there are also a collection of rusting nails lying flat next to the window track. They look old and have no standardized size or shape. Taking a moment, I smell the air, allowing my chef's olfactory prowess to take over. Closing my eyes, I can focus and detect the aroma of butter, fried eggs, beef, and potatoes. If I pull all of those away, I can also pick out the fragrance of herbs. A familiar one stands out, the musky smell of sage. Farmer Pickering is taking no chances. Considering his home's location, it's a good precaution to take. There are many threats that wander just beyond the edge of those trees. But this is a throw-everything-at-the-wall approach, not the learned and thoughtful method of an experienced practitioner. Things weren't always like this. These aren't traditions passed down from generation to generation. What happened? I ask, interrupting the conversation which had somehow evolved to the topic of pet food. The three of them stop abruptly. Even William, who's been otherwise scrutinizing the dogs, turns to look at me. Annabelle looks almost surprised to see me out of my seat, and Pickering frowns, sensing the walls of his privacy under siege. Only Ophelia looks to see beyond my question, quick to notice where I'm standing and piecing together what I'm talking about. What happened to make you so damn afraid of the woods? I insist. The words of Helen Edna, notary public, come back to haunt me. Everyone's got their own experience with the supernatural in Aquilo, but not everyone is willing to share on the same level. Well, screw that. Richard David Pickering is the man in the lighthouse. He sees the ships floating by and has equipped himself so as never to see them break their hull on his shores. Instead, every boat avoids his island, ending up in the waters of Aquilo. I need to know what sailed by that scared him like this. If it has anything to do with the disappearance of Annabelle's mother, or Ophelia's for that matter, it's time to come clean about it. I'm not afraid of the woods, he says, squaring his shoulders and pushing his chin forward as if his thick beard could be used as a shield against my question. How old is Darling? How about Dragon? I push, fueled no longer by mere curiosity but stubborn fear. Have you always had dogs on the farm? How long ago did you start? It's time for you all to go. He stands, never taking his eyes off me. He's using his height to try and intimidate me, and that might have worked 3 years ago, back when I would cower in the shadow of Gulliver's presence, or when I was a child, on those rare occasions when Eric, as my babysitter, needed me to obey. But what threat does he hold over me that I haven't faced since? Not that I'm not afraid. Pickering could break me over his knees as easily as I can make soda bread, but I know how to manage my fear far better now. Who taught you to use salt to protect your home? Where did you learn about cold iron to ward off the Fae? Go, he orders, voice low but simmering with anger. I walk over, not because I intend on leaving. Instead, I reach for the nails above the light switch and pick up one of the thick leather collars hanging there. The well-worn medallion has the word beauty engraved into it, along with a phone number. This seems to trigger something in Pickering, like watching me push over his father's tombstone. Veins in his neck bulge and the muscles in his arms flex. Teasing him over the edge like this isn't what Doris would do. At least, I don't think she would. Then again, Doris is dead, and perhaps her gentler touch is part of why that is. Always a big dog and a hound? I question, painting as much of the picture as I can, hoping he'll give up and fill in the rest of the image. I hunt, he growls, finally answering a question. I need a hound to hunt. Putting the collar back in place with equal parts care and respect, I notice a slight tremor to my fingers. The more I play with Pickering's nerves, the more mine are starting to fail me. Hunt what? Ophelia asks, voicing my next question before I can. Pickering doesn't answer, but nor does his frustration grow. Instead, it seems to shift. Like egg in a hot pan, its nature alters. It changes color and becomes less fluid. His focus is also no longer directed at the 3 young women drinking his coffee and enjoying his hospitality. Dark eyes wash over the walls of the kitchen like a king watching flames devour his kingdom. I exchange a glance with Annabelle, making sure she too notices this behavior in our host. Hunt what? Ophelia repeats with heightened intensity. She's trying to crack him, and again, like an egg, she has to do it in a way that opens the shell but without damaging the yolk. We want Pickering to talk, not force us to leave. Having been the target of this particular brand of Ophelia's attention in the past, I know it's not going to work. We have years of pointless hostility to support my claim. Mr. Pickering, I say, attempting to bring the boil back down to a simmer. We're not your enemies. We have the same goals. But you have to trust us. What happened? Why all of this? Why do you hunt? Please, tell us. Any detail could help find Annabelle's mother. Broad shoulders slump and hard features break. This is not defeat or resignation, but rather surrender to a deep sadness. Richard David Pickering's shell has been cracked, but rather than a fresh egg, glossy albumin, and bright yellow yolk, we instead find a dead chick, moist feathers, and empty eyes. He bumps into his chair, shoving it out of the way without notice as he leaves the kitchen. Wait here, he mumbles before disappearing into the guts of his home. The long minute passed in silence with the other girls feels like a decade. With every sound of the farmer's steps, I try to imagine what it is he's retrieving. Is that the sound of a drawer or a gun cabinet? Are his steps ponderous or hesitant? What is it we've brought forth with our questioning? Walking back through the threshold to the kitchen, Pickering isn't holding a weapon or even any item of obvious significance. Instead, using both hands to gently cradle it, he carries a small jewelry box. Of all the items I've seen the farmer handle, from tools to expensive GPS devices, never have I witnessed such care and reverence. Even the holy symbols and items that plaster the walls and frames of his kitchen feel like trash compared to the sacred respect he bestows on the tiny velvet box. He cracks the box open, and the sight of its content makes his lower lip tremble. He then puts the box on the table, leaning with his hands flat on either side as he contemplates whatever it is he keeps hidden there. After a long, emotionally charged moment, Pickering takes a deep breath that feels like it empties the whole room, then turns the box to face us. Tucked away between folds of velvet as dark as the night, a single, simple engagement ring rests. Ophelia reaches out to pick up the box and get a closer look, but Pickering's withering glare dissuades her from such curiosity. "This used to be a peaceful place," he explains. "Sure, we had fancy lights in the forest and the occasional weird thing happening here or there, but none of that demons and fairies nonsense. But then the old crone showed up. A witch. Not like you two. A real witch, pulled straight out of a storybook." He glares at Ophelia and me, and while he doesn't seem to redirect his grief and anger towards us, I don't feel like I'm totally off the hook either. "She came out of nowhere, and before we knew it, Aquilo was all monsters, broken families, demons, and death. They were bad days. Where Doris was kind and friendly, bending over backwards to make the community a better place, this witch brought nothing but sorrow to whatever doorstep she darkened with her presence." Unopposed, Annabelle takes the box between her fingers, bringing it close to her face to have a better look. While Pickering does monitor what she does with his most precious possession, he doesn't interfere. "Those woods took something precious from me," he continues, "and I'll be damned if I let them take anything more. Not if I can help it." Annabelle puts the box back, making an effort to set it in the exact position it was before. We all know that the woods around Aquilo have taken people, and I expect the news of each death or disappearance hits Richard David Pickering like a fresh failure. Every casualty a reminder of a much greater loss. I pinch the fabric on my apron, the one Ophelia embroidered and that I'm still wearing. Normally, there'd be a wooden spoon in the front pocket. Mine was a gift from someone precious to me. And while nothing special in and of itself, I've since stained it with the colors of countless recipes. Wooden spoons are sacred to the Dufour, and I can picture the utensils of my predecessors lined up above the register at the cafe. All but one. I think I know that witch. The journey back to the Aquilo Cafe started in complete silence. I think we all felt the cold pressure of all the things left behind. Pickering's grieving is but the tip of the branch. I can't imagine that Annabelle was happy leaving without her mother, and the forest which we thought cleansed of danger is once more growling threats at those who dare venture within. All three of us are consumed by our own thoughts and concerns. I can almost feel Ophelia burning with anger and sadness at what happened to her mother's remains. Meanwhile, Annabelle must be wondering if she won't be burying her own mom soon. Each is contemplating the line between life and death from different sides, safeguarding the dead and living respectively. As for me, I walk the line itself. With each step, I disturb the sand in which it's been traced, blurring the division. Philomene Dufour. What was she again? My great-great-grandaunt? What a mouthful. I know precious little about the Dufour women that came before me. The reason, while not obvious, is also fairly simple. Doris lived a very long life and had no children or immediate successor. By all accounts, she inherited the Aquilo Cafe from her own aunt, who had received it from her mother. But then she proceeded to outlive her nieces and cousins. Every leaf from her branch of the family fell off, leaving her alone. Eager to feel the embrace of civilization, we don't cross the border at the cafe like I usually do when I'm alone. Instead, we take the long way around, the one that goes through the streets of the village and Aquilo Border Park. Once under the protective glow of the streetlights, Annabelle pulls out the piece of paper she was handed by the Fae. Hastily stuffed into her pocket, it looks like a piece of junk mail, ready to be tossed in the trash. But the way she looks at it, pulling at the corners to tease creases from the sheet, it might as well be a treasure map. Ophelia slows her pace to walk beside Annabelle, looking over to examine the paper for herself. "So," she breaks the silence, "we exchanged cloud worshippers for a blood cult?" "I don't know," I answer from behind them. "They wouldn't let me in, but I was told that the group is led by those two demons that slipped away a while back. Greed and pride, which, when you think about it, are the exact ingredients you need if you're trying to bake a cult leader. I mean, isn't that what all those groups are based on?" "Who told you that?" Ophelia asks, uninterested in my analysis. "What?" "You said you were told," she continues. "By who?" "We're friends now, aren't we? More than that, we're allies. No longer foes, we share our enemies. Like pals sitting on a park bench, we tear a baguette in two, each devouring our half so that we can overcome a meal too big. Ophelia has joined my table, taking on the dishes Aquilo serves us with me and my friends. If we share the food, then we should also share the drinks. I can't keep everything I know from the other witches of Aquilo, not if we want to make it to dessert." "Come on," I say, taking a turn into Aquilo Border Park. "There's someone I want you to meet." Darkness engulfs us anew. Just like in the forest, we leave behind the lights of the village and surrender ourselves to that of the moon and the stars. Except, instead of the dark threat of the unknown that seems to grow on every branch on most nights in the woods of Aquilo, the park offers a different experience. I'd never claimed to feel safe here, nor do I feel in danger. Rather, it's the overwhelming presence of the unknown that covers every blade of grass like fresh dew. Annabelle recoils as we cross the path of the lady with the stroller, uncertain what she's seeing. A tall man, wearing a full navy dress uniform but with an entire sleeve ripped off, walks and sings on a path opposite ours. Gravel crunches under our feet, and Ophelia points to a bench in the distance where three diminutive figures, children wearing convincing skull masks and tattered cloaks, marvel at a thick tome held between them. If the village is strange in daylight, Aquilo Border Park at night breaks all the rules. It's where the things too bizarre to exist under the sun come to play. We make our way around the center of the park, where the dead stump of a massive tree sits like a monument. We cross the border, stepping over faded red and blue stones. For a moment, I worry that he won't be there and that I'll have to find the words to describe him, to describe them, myself.
"So,"
Annabelle mumbles, a little unnerved.
"which one of these people is your friend?"
As we get closer to Rue Principale, the welcoming orange glow of street lights offering the safety of home, I see the bench where we usually meet. On that bench, as I hoped, a silhouette as calm and composed as a marble statue. "Patience," I whisper. The figure raises its head, looking in our direction. Despite his features being obscured, I can see in the movement of his cheekbones the clues of a smile. "Miriam Dufour, Annabelle Lagacé, and Ophelia Serrajo," he says, the cadence of his voice that of someone without hurry. I shouldn't be surprised that I'm spared having to make introductions. Patience knew my name before we'd ever met. Annabelle and Ophelia are local celebrities in their own right. What I didn't expect was that some of that familiarity would be reciprocated.
"Well,"
Annabelle says, grabbing Patience's hands in her own before leaning in for an embrace.
"that's a face I haven't seen in a long time."
I exchange a look with Ophelia.
"You know each other?"
she asks, so I don't have to. Annabelle sits down on the bench next to Patience, leaving Ophelia and me to stand around awkwardly.
"Patience was at my first Dancelites,"
she explains with a note of nostalgic fondness.
"Not much of a dancer himself, but he taught me how to listen."
The young man, clad in his usual white hoodie, pulls a knee up to his chest, the trace of a smile on his lips. He looks at each of us the way a literary student scans the spines of books at the library. "Let me guess," I say, shrugging the bag off my shoulder. "You teach by example?" Patience chuckles, then raises his eyebrows as if he were admitting to a crime. "You could say that," he says, struggling to divide his attention between all of us. "Am I wrong to assume this isn't a social call?" His eyes settle on me in the end, as if he expects I'll be the one with the answer. Or perhaps I'm the only one who ever comes to the park for the occasional visit. "Actually," I explain, "I was wondering if you knew someone that goes by the name of Charity, and if you do, where I could possibly find him." I've known Patience for a while now, and I see him every other week at the least. Sometimes we don't even talk. I'll come to the park to read before going to bed, especially on those warm summer nights when the humidity in my apartment is just too much to tolerate. Other times we'll talk at length about whatever it is that bothers me, or the various residents of Aquilo. We don't usually get very deep on the topics, preferring to keep it light chatter like you'd expect at an office water cooler. In all that time, I don't think I've ever seen Patience with that particular look on his face. Patience pulls his second knee up to his chest, curling into a near fetal position on the bench. Annabelle instinctively puts a hand on his shoulder, offering comfort without even knowing the cause or extent of his distress. The boy named after a virtue looks beyond us and into the darkness of Aquilo Border Park. His expression tells a story of fear and regret. Perhaps I'm imagining things, but the way he avoids our gaze, closing himself up to us, I think I detect a hint of guilt. "Charity," he says, letting the word hang in the air like an incantation. "Didn't think I'd hear that name again."
Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.